You guys, we want to show your licenses. I'll do it. It's always been your side. Taxi cabs, massages, hardworkers, we just do the back. That's massage. So if we just
No worries.
Well, no, I actually
What do you consider
This is ours.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City Council meeting on Tuesday, September 3rd. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Alderman Santee.
Here.
Alderman Glad.
Here.
Alderman Schaefer.
Here.
Alderwoman Bainey. Here. Alderman Mahevic.
Here.
Alderman Devine.
Here.
Alderwoman Miller. Here. Mayor Judd.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to call to order a public hearing for consideration of an annexation agreement, annexation, zoning map and amendment, and a conditional use permit to allow agritourism and a landscape business with outdoor storage for the property located at 4727 West Crystal Lake Road. At this time, I'd like to invite, would you like to speak first? The attorney, which is, Steve Kuda, sorry. I should know that, out of everyone, I should know that. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mayor Judd. My name is Steve Kuda, of the law firm of Hammershoe and Kuda in Woodstock, Illinois. I'm here this evening on behalf of Teresa and Dennis Harms, the owners of Harms Farm and Garden Center, which is located on Crystal Lake Road, directly opposite McHenry West High School. My clients have petitioned the city of McHenry to annex their property and business into the city. We've also petitioned for zoning for A1 classification with a conditional use to allow agritourism. a landscape business, lawn maintenance business, and snow removal business to be conducted at the property, around the property. Just like to note at the get-go that Harms Farm and Garden Center has been in business for many, many years. I think at least 50, 55, maybe even 60. Dennis started the business when he was a young boy here in town. And we are not asking, or my clients are not asking for anything in addition to what is currently in operation at the Garden Center. There's no new uses proposed. Everything that is referenced in the petition and the proposed annexation agreement is what has been conducted on the site for many, many years. And my clients just felt that at this particular point in time, it made sense to annex into the city. I think they found that over the years, they're under the jurisdiction of McHenry County, and as agritourism has started to really take off, they're finding themselves more and more having to visit the county zoning offices for various permits and approvals and explanations of what they were doing at their business. And it seemed to make more sense that if that was the case, that it certainly would be a lot easier and probably more economical and cost-effective to do business with the city of McHenry rather than have to travel to Woodstock all the time. So that's really the reason why we're here today. It just at this particular point in time, it makes sense to bring this business in and bring it under the jurisdiction of the city of McHenry. About a week and a half ago on August 21st, we appeared before the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to review your packets and have read that the Zoning Board unanimously agreed or made a unanimous recommendation to the City Council that the requested zoning be approved and incorporated into an annexation agreement should my clients move forward, and they are moving forward. That's why we're here today. So we're requesting, I believe, three things tonight. The first is that the property in question be annexed into the city of McHenry. Second, that the City Council be authorize the execution of an annexation agreement, and then upon annexation, that the various zoning requests that the Zoning Board of Appeals dealt with a week and a half ago be incorporated into your ordinances and into the annexation agreement. We can spend a few minutes, if you want, taking a look at that annexation agreement. I'd just like to point out that the annexation agreement, the form is really nothing new to the City Council. This is a form that was provided by staff, used in the past for businesses that were ongoing and were brought into the city of McHenry. So the format is something that I would hope all of you would be comfortable with. I'd just like to point out there is one error that I've made in putting together the annexation agreement. I don't think it's major. We referenced that there are 3 electors on the property that reside on the property, and that's not the case. There's one elector, and that's Dennis's mom, Shirley Harms. So that I just want to bring that to your attention. The other thing you should note, the various petitions that have been filed, the paperwork refers to a First Midwest Bank Trust number 12742. That is a land trust at First Midwest Bank. It's originally was with McHenry State Bank. The 2 beneficiaries of that trust are Teresa and Dennis Harms. That McHenry State Bank land trust owns 3 of the lots numbers 26, 27, and 28 in Kelter Estate subdivision. Shirley Harms Revocable Trust, in which Shirley Harms is the trustee and sole beneficiary, is the owner of lot number 25. So that's why we see, if you look at the paperwork, you see all these different, you see Shirley Harms' name, Shirley Harms Trust, Dennis, Teresa Harms, and First Midwest Bank Trust 12742. But for all intents and purposes, it's Dennis and Teresa who own and operate Harms Farm and Garden Center, and they're the ones that are petitioning today. What I would consider the...
But wait, Steve, but we're also, well, right here.
Pardon?
We're annexing 25 too, right?
25, 26, 27, and 28. So Shirley's is 25, and Dennis and Teresa through First Midwest Bank are lots 26, 27, and 28.
And 25 is the one to the far north?
Yes. And it's Shirley's residence. And I think that's referenced in the annexation agreement. So if you were to take a look at the proposed annexation agreement, the first few pages are your standard boilerplate, but if you look at paragraph 3 on page 3, that talks about the various zoning requests that are being made by the petitioners, and it's mainly the ability under your particular zoning ordinance to conduct the business that's being presently conducted on the property. There is nothing new being requested. And again, it's asking for the conditional use for garden center, for agritourism, for landscape business, lawn maintenance, lawn mowing, in other words, and then snow removal. Then in the winter, depending on what the weather is like, Dennis does do a little snow plowing. That seemed to be an issue with the county, so we just always make it clear when it came to the city of McHenry that that business is conducted on the property and should be part of the zoning and conditional use. On page 4 at the top, I think there's 7 or 8 specific business activities that are mentioned. And again, we just wanted to make it crystal clear to everyone that the businesses or the activities that are conducted on Harms Farm. I think we all know that there's retail sales of plants and shrubs, fertilizer, firewood, that. There's also retail sales of food related to, I guess, agritourism. They do in the fall. I'm sure some of our city council members in their younger days were riding a little train around Harms Farm. That's been going on for many, many years and would continue under the annexation agreement and the proposals today. Christmas tree sales in December. That would include also not only Christmas trees, but wreaths, gray blankets, sales of ornaments, Christmas plants, poinsettias, and related articles. Halloween is a big activity at Harms Farm and Garden Center, and again, I don't think that surprises anyone here because that's just been what's been going on there for many, many years. And it allows for 2 signs, which are there, and I think 4 banners. There's nothing new being requested. Paragraph 5 on the bottom of page 4 refers to water and sewer service. We're not requiring, in the terms of the annexation agreement, the garden center is not required to hook up their, in fact, there isn't water nearby or sewer service. If they choose to do so in the future, they can. They have to pay the appropriate fees that the city would charge any other business, but they're not required to do so. On page 5, we talk about that the property is coming in and sort of in its as-is condition. If the city has stricter ordinances in effect right now, Harms Farm can continue with what they have. They do not have to make any upgrades. If something burns down or is destroyed, then it would be rebuilt to your higher standards, with the exception of, I think, 2 greenhouses and what you call a polycarbonate building. Is that what it is, Dennis?
If I want to put new coverings on the greenhouses, I can do that, whether it's plastic or polycarbonate.
So with there can stay, if it's destroyed other than the couple items that we just mentioned, they're specified in paragraph 6, then they would be upgraded to city standards. Since this is an ongoing business and there is nothing new being proposed, nothing new being built, paragraph 7 at the bottom of page 5 called for a fee waiver of your annexation fees. My experience, and I think historically the city has always welcomed these smaller islands that are surrounded by the city that have from time to time requested that they be annexed. I know that this is, at least with the, at least with the city of McHenry, this proposal really isn't new. I know it goes back many, many years where someone, maybe an alderman, maybe a former mayor would stop in at Harms Farm and say, hey, why don't you folks consider annexing to the city? You're surrounded by the city, it would just make sense. So under those circumstances, a fee waiver is appropriate. The rest of it is just boilerplate, references the parties, where notices are to go in the event there's some type of issue with the agreement. I don't have any other anything else to add. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions. If you have questions for Dennis or Teresa with respect to the operation of the business, I'm sure they could answer those for you. The only thing I did mention to Doug and to Attorney McCardle, the ordinance zoning, our petition specifically referenced agritourism, A1 zoning, landscape business. It also, the petitions also referenced, and it was before the zoning board of appeals, were the snow removal and the lawn maintenance. And for some reason, those two, snow removal and lawn maintenance, didn't make it into the draft ordinances, which is before you. So we would ask that those two terms be incorporated into that zoning ordinance. And again, it's all part of, it's specifically referenced in the petition for annexation, petition for zoning, and the draft annexation agreement.
Thank you, Steve. I'm gonna go ahead and go to the public for the rest of the public hearing, and then I'll go ahead and turn it over to council for any questions for you or the Harms family. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a public comment during the public hearing of this portion of the meeting? See none? All right, going to the council. Do you have any questions for the Harms or Steve Kuda? Alderman Glenn?
No questions. I went through this. It's quite lengthy, but all I was going to say is I can understand everything that's been put in here. I know at least 25 years that I've heard nothing about, you know, why isn't Harms Farm in the city? And for the average resident in the city that visits there, they don't even realize it isn't in the city. And I just think it's a technicality that over the years that I'm seeing that it's finally coming to fruition. And to be honest with you, when my kids were small, I used to go there, and my daughter and my wife used to take the kids for the petting zoo, and my daughter is, I don't know, in her later 30s now, and my wife still takes my daughter to the petting zoo. So I mean, it's a tradition, and you know, there's probably hundreds of families in the area that it's traditional to go to Harms Farm for Christmas or for whatever holiday. And I just hope that everything goes the way it seems to be going, and would like to just say welcome to the city of McHenry officially.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just if you could explain how the outdoor storage is going to be handled. I just wanted to understand that, if someone could explain it, either Dennis or Teresa.
The vehicle outdoor storage?
Yeah, vehicle
outdoor
also,
storage
what else?
for the lawn maintenance and landscaping is all in the back.
Okay.
The other outdoor storage is mostly bag sales and rocks and stuff like that, but all the way in the back of the property, there's a cell tower, and we have this right behind here. This is where all the parking is for all of those vehicles.
So vehicles are in the back?
They're all in the back, yeah, they're all in the back. I mean, we're so narrow in the front and so long in the back, and we're all surrounded by trees. There's no, you can't even tell that we have vehicles back there. But yeah, they're all back here. That's where employee parking is, and then the landscape trucks.
Okay.
And they're, this time of year, they're only there at night.
All right, thank you.
Is that snow plowing also?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Any other questions?
I have a really kind of insignificant question, but it's for our attorney, just for my own information. In the agreement that Mr. Kuda wrote up, it says the 2 signs and the 4 banners. If we were to make any changes, say in the next couple of years about signage in the city, would they be subject to any changes we made regarding signage, or would they be allowed to keep theirs because it was in their agreement?
I think the intent is to let them keep what they have. Now, the problem is, I'm trying to find that. It's on page 4. It says, Harms Farm includes the following business operations. And the last one is 2 signs and 4 banners may be placed. There's no specifications on that. We don't know, are they the existing 2 signs and the existing 4 banners?
Yes, there's 2 existing signs, and there's banners. We put up, we have banners that go this way, and then we have some banners that go tall. They just
I know, but do the banners change from this year to next year?
The banners change, the signs do not.
Okay. So again, there's no specifications on here, but the intent is to allow the existing 2 signs and 4 banners. There's no specifications on it though.
Well, at Christmas season, we have Christmas banner. At Halloween, we have pumpkin banner. You know, it's just exchanging them out for the seasonal.
Are they all the same
Right,
sizes?
but you don't have
They're all the
sizes.
same, yeah, they're upright banners. They're, you know,
The wind banners, right?
Yes, yes.
Right, but there's big wind banners and there's little wind banners, there's no specifications here. So, but they get 4 of those, whatever they are, the way it's written. 4 of those, whatever they are, and they get 2 signs, and there's no specifications on here either. We don't know if it's the existing, or if it's a larger sign, that they, you know, if they wanna go to a sign with moving lights on it, we have no say about that, because it says 2 signs. So if you want specifications, we need to specify it and reach an agreement on that. So it's a little vague.
Yeah, I agree.
Alderman Santi?
Can we, agree that the signage that's there today, we keep to those specifications?
I mean, like size and height?
Yeah,
Yeah,
size and
that's
height,
right.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
we just didn't put that detail in here, but if
Yeah.
that's the intent,
Yeah.
it'd probably be better to clarify that.
Yeah, that's
And then
fine.
on the banners, we just need a height, I think they come in 4-foot and 10-foot heights, actually.
I think
14,
not
yeah,
14.
yeah, they can get
They're
pretty
like, I
big.
think they're 12 or
Yeah.
12 or,
You
there's
know,
something.
whatever they are,
Whatever they are, they have to stay that.
that's the intent, is to
No one-
stay with what they have, so we'll specify that in the agreement. Okay?
We can always send community development out and get those measurements, so we can specify that. Any other questions? See none. Doug, would you like to add some?
All I wanna add is if, as part of my comments, was just putting the petting zoo in the annexation agreement. Because it's not in there right now, it's not addressed, so just let it have it.
The petting zoo's not in there? You said the petting zoo's not.
Or animals, whatever the temporary use thing.
Yeah. In October.
In October.
Yeah.
Well, it says animal petting zoo, anyway, so that's fine. You know, but I wanna go back to this. All of these are vague. We don't know how big their storage piles are, how many pieces of equipment, what kind of equipment. There's no detail in there, but the intent is to, I mean, not that this is enforceable, but the intent is to allow what they're doing today and have done in the past, allow that in the future. So, I don't know what the problem was with the county. Maybe they didn't have any problems with any of the outdoor storage, but there's no particular specification about outdoor storage, including on the map. Just they're allowed to do it as part of their business.
They were never subject to any inspection from the city, it was always the county, correct?
Right.
The city did do a walkthrough of the property already.
No, but in the past, no, it's the county. What
Exactly,
has been the county.
so to your point, with that stuff being as vague as it is that something that you're suggesting?
The business is gonna take care of itself. It's not a gravel pit. They're not gonna have huge piles of gravel there for no particular reason, because they have to conduct their business. They're not gonna tear, you know, it is what it is. They're not gonna tear down the building and have heaps of piles of asphalt. It's not what's permitted. That's not permitted. There are accessory uses to that, and there's only so much space, because it's so narrow. So I think it's gonna be self-policing, but I just need you to know that that's the way it reads. You could go crazy over this and have them identify every outdoor sale of trinkets that are out there, and it would be difficult to do because it changes all the time.
You're not, like, when you abandon a vehicle, you're not leaving those there, you're getting rid of them, or, you know what I mean? When you obviously get new replacement vehicles, you're not
They all
having
run, yeah,
old
we don't,
vehicles there, you're not.
we're not starting a junkyard, no.
You're not storing landscaping waste from your landscaping business, anything like that, it's all.
No, we have dumpsters for those.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not always gonna be these people. This is gonna run with the land for 20 years, and so it's gonna be their successors as well. So we don't know who those are, or what kind of.
And it's
business
really
they'll-
only because of working with the county that you're doing this now? Like
Seems
like Steve explained? Is that it? Really?
I've had numerous people ask me to come in, and I'm like, well, seems like a good time.
Yeah, they're not the only ones doing this around the county. There's other properties that are.
Oh, I know, I just know
annexing it.
the history of that property is, I'm specific to that, is the only reason why I'm asking.
It's pretty common.
Doug, anything else?
No.
Okay. All right, at this time, any last words, Steve?
You know, maybe just to briefly touch on the enforcement and changes, I'll tell you how the county does it, because I represent clients all the time that are getting cited by the county. The Office of the Building and Zoning looks at aerial photos, and especially on zoning that I've done with conditional uses. I've got a client that's got a very large campground that is limited to the number of campsites that they can rent out, and they've been cited by the county because the county, someone up in staff takes a look at the aerial photos and counts, 212 campsites for like 2012 when we went in for the conditional use, and now there happens to be 224. And so there are ways that I think it's relatively easy for staff if they really want to police what's going on in the back. Those aerial photos are readily available and show from 6 months to 6 months to 6 months what if any changes have been made. And if my clients, if Dennis or Teresa, add on to some of those buildings and start doing things that aren't anticipated here tonight, I'm sure a phone call would be made by somebody, and we have to answer to all you folks.
Thank you. All right. I'm looking for a motion to close the public hearing. Alderman Santee.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Second. Alderman Miller.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller.
Yes.
Alderman Devine.
Yes.
Alderman Mahavik.
Yes.
Alderwoman Bainey.
Yes.
Alderman Schaefer.
Yes.
Alderman Glad.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Next item on the agenda is 5A is a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing the execution of an annexation agreement with the trust number 12742, Dennis L. Harms and Teresa M. Harms. Looking for a motion. Alderman Miller?
So I'll make that motion with the changes that we just spoke of.
Right, that would be the lot
changes-
25 reference.
The lot 25 reference, the sign reference, and the petting zoo / animal reference, because we all want the petting zoo during the Halloween season, because Andy has to come visit them. They're his friends, so I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second? Alderwoman Bainey?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? See none, clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Miller.
Yes.
Alderwoman Bainey.
Yes.
Alderman Santee.
Yes.
Alderman Glad.
Yes.
Alderman Schaefer.
Yes.
Alderman Mahavik.
Yes.
Alderman Devine.
Yes.
Mayor Judd.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is 5B, motion to approve an ordinance authorizing the annexation of property at 4727 West Crystal Lake Road. Looking for a motion. Alderman Santee,
I'll make that motion. as
Second.
presented.
by Alderman Glad.
Second.
Discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santee.
Yes.
Alderman Glad.
Yes.
Alderman Schaefer.
Yes.
Alderwoman Bainey.
Yes.
Alderman Mahavik.
Yes.
Alderman Devine.
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller.
Yes.
Mayor Judd.
Yes. Thank you, Council. Next item on the agenda is 5C, motion to approve an ordinance authorizing a zoning map amendment to A1 agriculture and conditional use permit to allow agritourism and landscape business with outdoor storage for the property located at 4727 West Crystal Lake Road.
With the amendment to add lawn maintenance and snowplow. Snowplow.
Looking for a motion. Alderman Santee,
I'll make that motion.
second. Alderman Schaefer, geez, my
Second.
mind. Long weekend. Any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santee.
Yes.
Alderman Schaefer.
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller.
Yes.
Alderman Devine.
Yes.
Alderman Mahavik.
Yes.
Alderwoman Bainey.
Yes.
Alderman Glad.
Yes.
Good luck.
Welcome to the city of McHenry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ross. I'm sorry, I forgot you were on here.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. Paula, we're gonna wait till the discussion portion of the cannabis discussion, okay? Is there anyone that is wanting to make a public comment that is not items on the agenda at this time? See none? Moving on to the consent agenda. Looking for a motion to approve 7A through 7H.
Let's
You
pull
wanna
A
pull it?
to
Pull A?
vote separate, please.
Okay. Anyone else want to pull item for separate consideration?
I'll make a motion for B through H.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Alderwoman Miller for the second. Discussion on these items? E through H. Discussion by council? Seeing none? Please call the roll.
Okay, Alderman Glad?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Devine?
Yes.
Alderman Mahavik?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bainey?
Yes.
Alderman Schaefer?
Yes.
Alderman Santi?
Yes. Thank you, council. Item 7A was pulled by Alderman Glad regarding an ordinance amending Chapter 12 licenses and permits generally in raffles. I would like to seek a motion for this item. Alderman Santi?
I'll make a motion, make a motion to approve 7A as presented.
Thank you. Second? Alderwoman Miller?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion on this item. Alderman Glad?
Yeah, the only reason I pulled it, and I don't agree with is that I just felt more comfortable that we were back at $1 million limit, and I don't feel that we should be raising it again, and I think down in the near future, as things go, I think we're gonna be looking at raising it again, and it's like, when's enough? And it's just the way I feel, so that's why I wanted to vote on it separately.
Thank you. Alderwoman Bainey?
For clarification on that limit, is that $2 million what the winner takes home, or is that the full pot of any particular raffle?
Payout.
It's
That's what the winner takes home.
It's what the winner takes home, so that means the pot's up to $4 million.
Depending on the game, yeah. So they've changed, like if you're using the VFW as an example, they've changed the rules of their game twice now. It's their rules, so if a 50-50 raffle, it would be $4 million. If it was a 60-40 raffle, it would, obviously those numbers would
So
change.
potentially they could make it a 30-70 and the pot could get up to, $8 million or something. I mean,
They could only pay out two.
they could pay out to, okay.
It's the max they
So-
can pay out.
Okay.
Any other questions? Alderman Schaefer?
And the other point that you bring up in that situation is that this, again, applies to all entities requesting raffles, not just the VFW.
Correct.
Any other questions? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santi?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Devine?
Yes.
Alderman Mahavik?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bainey?
Yes.
Alderman Schaefer?
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
No.
Thank you, council. Next item on the agenda is 9A, Prairie Land Disposal Yard Waste Program. We have removed this from the agenda, but if there is someone from the public that would like to make public comment and let your voices be heard, you could step up to the podium at this time. See none? Moving on to 9B, recreational cannabis. Start the discussion. Chief, do you want to start this off?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Obviously, we've had this discussion from staff now for the last few months. We've met on numerous occasions with staff in our own internal committee, with Doug Martin, Ross Palarecki, City Administrator Moorfield, and myself, to try to prepare a document that we can bring back to council for further discussion. The goal for us of tonight's discussion is to get council's feedback, consideration, and direction on whether or not they are interested in allowing dispensaries within its corporate limits of McHenry, and if so, what restrictions they would like to place on those dispensaries specific to zoning and specific to conditional use permits, which then would allow us to regulate the location within town and potential amount of dispensaries that would be eligible to apply to come into town. We provided a handout for all of council that basically gives you just an overall introduction, gives you an idea of what other McHenry County municipalities are currently at, what their status on this topic is. We also spent some time providing you with what we felt were the benefit, the risks, any concerns, and what other municipalities are looking, and then just a breakdown of how that zoning, business licensing would work if council chooses to move forward with advising us to allow dispensaries. And we're available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Doug, you want to add anything to that?
No, just here to answer questions.
All right. Start it off with discussion by council. Alderman Schaefer?
As stated in there, there is some leeway for decisions that we can make as a city. The one thing that I had a question about, does home rule apply to that, or does any city who has this and it may not be home rule, do they get to make those same type of decisions, or is that solely?
Yeah, Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, home rule does not apply to this. The state's made it very clear that this is the recreational sale of cannabis is a state-regulated law, but it does provide some specific exceptions to that, to any municipality, which is specific to zoning regulations or conditional use permitting, which essence allows us to then formulate a plan to limit the number of locations within our community. The only time we can get more aggressive than that is if you'll see in some of the options we gave you, if we allow on-premise consumption. If you decide to say we want to allow dispensaries and we want to allow on-premise consumption, then we can exert our home rule authority in essence, or we can become more restrictive in what the parameters around that specific business or location would be.
Okay, thank you. After reading through all this and kind of polling some people, the big concerns are always the location of it, it seems to be, and the on-premise use. So I guess my thing would be are we making a decision tonight or just discussing where things may be? But my point is that I think we would have to make some stipulation about where they would be located, so I would have that location and number of facilities would be two key things for that I think should
That's
be
what our
addressed.
goal is to get a consensus from council that if you want to allow it or you don't want to allow it. If you do want to allow it, what areas of town would you like to see it in and what areas would you not like to see it in? And then we can configure zoning accordingly when we bring it back. And if you want to allow on-premise consumption or not.
Oh.
And then would you tell us, and how many places do you want to see? And you'll see in there, Algonquin is leaning towards creating zoning that only allows for 2 for right now in their community. And Cary is working towards zoning that only allows it in industrial parks. Yeah, I think it's pointed out in here, but we do feel with the research that we've done is that there's 185 of these that will be eligible in the state. So it's going to become a destination. It doesn't, and what I mean by that, and when Doug and I talked is, it doesn't need to be on a main front road in town. It can be in an industrial park. People are still going to come to it.
And you can also prohibit it.
Yes.
You can also prohibit it entirely.
Okay, that's all I have.
Alderman Beatty?
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with Jeff. I think we should limit it. I mean, for that matter, we could limit it to 1, but 2 at the max, because the chance of getting 2 is maybe slim based on the limitations. I also think in an industrial park and somewhere that's, not really highly visible throughout the community, and I would definitely not be in favor of consumption in their location.
Alderman Santee?
That number 185, so it's the first 185 applicants that come into the state? I mean,
The state's got a very rigorous licensing process that you have to go through. So they have to go through, we're the zoning process, the state's licensing process.
Okay. And is it safe to say that many of these municipalities are going to be moving on this at a relatively quick pace, because once 185 is done, it's done, right?
What's 185? Where's that number?
That's the state.
That's the amount of dispensaries that the state's going to allow within the state during the current legislation, the way it's set up.
No, that's not the way it works.
Yeah,
It is.
it is.
Okay, and just in regards to our Q&A here and what we're looking at, yes, I'd like to see a dispensary, 1 or 2 allowed here in the city of McHenry. The bottom line is, yes, it's gonna be taxed. Yes, it's gonna bring in revenue to the city. I would definitely like it zoned to make sure it's in what Alderman Bainey brought up in regards to like an industrial area. but zone it and make sure we control it under that, under the zoning agreement, zoning ordinance.
Conditional use.
Conditional. It has to be a conditional use.
So we can put a conditional use, they've already, the state
Okay,
already
how-
says that they have that, when they can operate.
That's the way, okay, all
And
right.
there is already a separation requirement.
Yeah, and I'm definitely in agreement with the other aldermen in regards to no on consumption on the premises. And I think I mentioned this already, but we're allowed a maximum of 3% on this? Is that what we're allowed?
We get 1% of the actual state
That's
sales
state.
tax, plus we can add an additional 3%
Up to
on top of
three,
that.
up to 3%.
Up to 3%. You'll see that Lake in the Hills, they're leaning towards a 2%.
2%.
Based on their discussion, and I know David might have more than that, because I know that presentation was put on by
And
his
I'm
office.
agreeable to one of, either 2 or 3% on that. And this would be an ongoing process once we would have this. If we wanted to make an adjustment down the line,
Well,
in regards to what we do here at our level, I know we can't touch state.
I mean, can you increase it once it comes into the?
Sure, what if we increase the dispensary 2 years from now, could we do that?
Yes, that's what Algonquin's doing. They're gonna create their legislation, their ordinances to limit to 2, and they're gonna revisit it down the road. Because the 185 isn't, that's the number right now, but as this whole plan folds out, I think it's 2022, there'll be those regulations will lift, and there will be more dispensaries allowed potentially. So there will be a time where this will have to come back to you at some point. In January.
The way the numbers work is there's 55 licensed medical dispensaries today.
Okay, that's medical.
On January 1st, all of those will automatically be eligible to convert to a dispensary. They're automatically approved. Another 75 licenses will be issued by the state
Mhm.
prior to the summer of 2020. Only 75. Another 110 can be issued by the end of 2021, and another 500 can be issued by 2022. So you can see it's a gradual increase, and there's tremendous competition between cities and villages.
Yes.
This is nothing compared to gaming. This has nothing to do with the level of gaming activity that's going on. So this is just gonna be very few that are sprinkled throughout the state.
The other thing is that we're gonna see is the authority to issue those 500 additional
These are
ones
just dispensaries, I'm sorry.
switches to the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. We don't know how that's gonna play out yet
Right.
either. So
Right.
they're not in charge, they don't have any oversight over the first 75 and that 110 David talked about, which is the 185 we're referring to. So we don't know how that's gonna look yet.
So there's 4 uses you need to be concerned about. It's not just dispensaries. There's cultivation centers, the growing of the plants inside a big building. That's one use. There's 4 in the state.
Okay.
The second one is dispensaries and craft growing in the dispensary. The next one is infusion, which means food infused cannabis. That's different than a dispensary, in addition to a dispensary. And transporters. Cultivation centers, dispensaries, infusers, and transportation. Those are the 4. When you look at the statute, it's 6 inches thick. Every 2 inches regulates those uses.
Those
Very
are all in those
stringent.
numbers, so.
Those are all part of the 185?
No, that's just dispensaries, the ones
Okay.
we're most concerned about. But
Okay.
You also regulate infusion, in cultivation, and transportation.
Okay.
You don't have to have them all. You can say no to some, yes to some.
Well, we already addressed cultivation centers in our zoning ordinance.
Yeah, several years ago.
We did. And our ability to regulate them is different than dispensaries too.
Yeah. What I'm hearing from these public hearings that are going on is cultivation. If you drive through Denver, you can smell this stuff.
Mhm.
You're smelling the cultivation exhausts from the buildings. They're filtered, they're stringently filtered, but there's some discharge, and in small towns, they seem to think, if we had a cultivation, even though they're agricultural towns, They're concerned about that issue in a small regional town.
Alderman Bainey?
Just for a point of clarification, we're only talking about recreational dispensaries right now, correct?
Correct.
So,
Correct.
I know council previously approved a medical dispensary, which hasn't come to fruition, but this would be in addition to, if that ever did, I don't know where that stands, but, okay.
Yeah, we're only talking recreational.
Alderman Shaver?
And on that same vein though, too, could this be part of an existing business, or is this gonna be, are these completely standalone? Meaning, will they be able to add to it if they get approved to be a dispensary? Can they then be the infusion location? Can they also sell alcohol? Can they have gaming? Can they add other businesses to it?
They can add other businesses, but they can't add infusion unless you permit it. Those are both, if you give us direction tonight as to where we're going here, we would create conditional uses for each one of these, or one, however you wanna go. They would be separate conditional uses, infusion and dispensary. And then, but they could still sell alcohol. There's nothing saying you can't mix another retail sale with it.
I guess I'd like to hear what, other than what we have, does staff have any comments on where they'd like to see this go? Or check more with the council first, I guess.
Is there any other comments by the council?
Yeah.
Alderman Glenn?
Yeah, I just feel that more than anything else is, it's gonna be a destination that where those that wish to purchase it will know where that destination is. It doesn't have to be out in the limelight of our main roads and advertising it. The city of McHenry has marijuana. Want to be very careful with our zoning classes because, you know, you could say industrial, but then we have industrial that goes out to 120 right there at Crystal Lake Road. You know, you can go business park, and Gary Lang's in business park. You know, so I mean, that whole area over there is business park, could be an area right next to him that it opens up. I mean, so we want to be careful that we can control it to where we can be sure where it's going to go. Not saying specifically one specific lot, but the area that we want it. If we're talking business park, we want it back in the business park. We don't want it out on the main road. I mean, that's the whole idea.
Okay.
That's kind of a concern to me. I honestly believe that we probably should readdress our ordinances on everything growing and whatnot with marijuana. I mean, the business is changing. You know, the whole atmosphere is changing down there in Springfield, and statutes are getting changed and everything else, and we may need to address everything all over again. You know, we originally created that zoning because of the fact that we had someone that was willing to throw I think it was $30-some thousand in for an application for one of the
Medical.
yeah, and that's why it was created. And do we need it? Do we want it out there anymore? I mean, what are the benefits? You know, as the state takes and allows more of these facilities and everything else, the net worth of one of those facilities and the revenue to that municipality is gonna change as well. And when does it come to where the revenue that it generates for the city isn't worth paying much more than what it's costing to monitor it and police it? And all that stuff needs to be looked at, you know, and that's why I say we need to readdress all that other, only because of the fact, just so it isn't sitting out there as far as in our zoning, and then somebody comes across with something a few years down the road, and it's gonna cost us to police it, staff to set the whole thing up. And then, you know, the revenue that possibly that comes out of it isn't anywhere near what it was when they were first originally proposed. Because David, you said what, there were how many in the state? 40-something?
55.
55?
55 medical.
55 medical dispensaries. How many growing?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you'd mentioned.
No, I don't know how many.
There is,
That's all right. But the thing I'm getting at
there's
is.
20
Oh, I'm sorry, there's
cultivation
20,
locations.
there's 20.
Yeah. And how do we know? I mean, you know, if we have, recreational going through and opening up everywhere, there's gonna be a need for more of it, and so there's gonna be more, growers out there. I can see it happening. So, yeah, you know, let's just make sure we look at everything so that we're prepared for whatever the changes come in the next 2, 3, 4 years. We don't wanna be out there to where we can't say no.
Alderman Miller?
So earlier this spring, when our legislators came back from Springfield after this was passed, they did a lot of town hall meetings. And needless to say, this was a big piece of that puzzle. I think most of us attended one or many. And many of our constituents were there with the same concerns we're talking about. I did not hear sentiment about, oh, I don't want that in my town. It was more about location, abundance, and they were connecting the dots to dispensaries and vape shops, or dispensaries and casino gambling slot machines. So I think it's a good conversation that we're having about, we get it, it's coming, we need to understand it, but we need to limit access and we need to limit location. And I think that's very positive. So when I look at the proposals that are presented, I don't see that prohibiting is an option, because it's coming. We don't know if we're gonna have someone permitted to do so, because that's a process we don't control. So in my eyes, I think we have to look at with or without consumption, and then kick it back to zoning and say, where is it most appropriate? Because that really appears to be what our people want us to do. And that echoes everything I heard at all those town halls and the conversations that I'm having in the public, so.
Thank you. Alderman Mahavik?
I mean, I agree with what's been said already, but I think in addition to the restrictions that we talked about so far, we might wanna look at things like limiting the amount of signage. You know, freestanding signage maybe should be prohibited, building signage limited to a certain amount of square feet. You know, that might be an option, minimum or maximum number of square feet of the premises itself. You know, we don't want a 50,000 square foot operation, maybe, I don't know. Hours of operation, you know, we might wanna limit in some regard. You know, you want a 24-hour operation probably, something like this. You know, parking requirements. So, you know, if it's an industrial area, you probably don't want cars up and down the street inhibiting other people's businesses. And then maybe even a certain radius type restriction against, you know, away from other types of uses like we do with other types of sales. So not within certain feet from a school or a whatever, church, even park. Even a number of feet away from maybe other zoned type uses, so you can't be within 100 feet or 500 feet of B1 district or something like that, so you're truly tucked back in industrial park. So those are just some ideas of other types of restrictions we don't have. That's all.
Thank you. Alderman Schaefer?
Did you say that we would be able to, in additional to that, to like restrict the additional businesses under one roof? To me is an issue, but that's not something that could be restrictive as part of this?
I've never heard anybody raise that issue, but I can't see it being an obstruction to use. You could make it you could make it an independent use in your conditional use.
It has to be a freestanding building.
Yeah, however you wanna word that, right.
Yeah, I mean,
No other uses, that's it.
Considering, I mean, there's only gonna be X amount in the state, they're liable as far as getting hit, so yeah.
That would probably be the way to handle it through zoning.
But I'm just seeing from a business standpoint to have additional things under one roof, a smoke shop, additional use that we already have now. I just think this should be more of a standalone, I think, that's all I'm
I
saying.
think they think that too.
Okay.
Have you ever looked at the medical facilities?
Yeah.
They're nice. I mean, they really put a lot
Yeah.
of money into it, and they're not gonna, I don't think vaping's what they're interested in. Well, it might be, but not.
But I mean, just look at other businesses when you know, that it becomes a financial situation, because these are independent business owners, so they're gonna look at other revenue streams, and that's, if I can get them in here for multiple uses, that's gonna be a key thing. I still would like to hear what maybe the chief has to say.
Chief?
Yeah, just to answer some of the questions that have come up. There is 1,000-foot restrictions on schools already in state statute. There's a 1,500-foot restriction from one dispensary to another. These are things that we would build into when Doug works on the zoning, based on whatever advice you give him, to help regulate what the numbers look like. So if we took an industrial park, for example, and you allowed them in that industrial park, and one person opened up shop, it would max out that industrial park, because you would fall within that, you couldn't put another one up, it would be within 15 feet of the other one. So by you telling them specific areas on where you'd like to see it allowed, that's going to help dictate what number you're actually going to see allowed in the community. We are also, it's the one thing that you'll see in the packet, we're also allowed to put restrictions on off-street parking. You know, so that way, we don't want a shop going up on Green Street. We want, it has to be a building that has its own private parking lot. These are things that we're allowed to do specifically. They're actually addressed in the statute that says, yep, you can do that. You can't do any of this other stuff because the state's gonna regulate that, but you can do this. And so that's kind of important. As far as the aspect from, we've talked as staff, we would focus your guys' attention to, and we can't give you, a defined opinion in certain things, but take a look at what the benefits are, and then we would ask you to at least, look at what the risks and the concerns on what that does for a community's perception. One way or the other, I know it's the hot topic on all councils. What's the perception gonna be like, and how do we regulate our healthy community image, basically, for lack of purposes, with that. But as far as the regulation goes, the only thing, as far as the police department for, that we are not for on-site consumption. That would be the one thing that I would say, is that we are not for. That would directly affect the safety of our community, knowingly, by allowing that.
Thank you, Chief. Alderman Glad?
Yeah, question I've got is where does the county stand on this? Because I think that's an important question, because, okay, we just talked about annexing Harms Farm, just even down Crystal Lake Road. I mean, we've got, granted, some of those areas are too close to the schools.
Yeah.
But, do we have areas in the city that are in the county that would qualify to be able to open up in the county, right within the middle of the city of McHenry?
I don't have an answer for you for there. I don't know where the county
I think we
stands on
need to
this.
find that out, though. I think for the next time that we address that, I think we should know what can happen around our borders.
But I think it doesn't matter if it's county, or if you look at it, if it's Johnsburg or Lakemore. We discussed this in length. If somebody that's close to our borders is going to allow it, it's still gonna impact our community. It's still gonna impact our roadway safety and everything else, whether or not it's actually directly in town. It's a destination. We know this. So we know people are going to drive to McHenry or to Lakemore or to Johnsburg or to an unincorporated area that's right next to our border, and we're still gonna have to deal with whatever impact that has on safety concerns for the community. It's that, to me, that's, at this point, it's, the difference is, we won't know what they're gonna be.
Right. I mean, let's say we limit it to 2, and then, like I say, in the middle of the city somewhere where we have a county parcel, that opens up. I mean, do we have any jurisdiction on that? No.
Is there any residential restrictions, or just, meaning close
How
to
residential?
close to residential things? It's just
No.
schools and.
Are you aware of any other restrictions outside what we talked about?
I'm just thinking of those.
There are hours of
places.
operation restrictions too. I know that was spoken of. The act allows dispensaries only to operate between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. If it's uncertain on whether or not a municipality would be allowed to require shorter hours of operation as a condition of issuing a conditional use purpose permit for a dispensary. Again, there's some unclear areas here about how far a municipality can reach, because the state's made it very clear that this is a state law. But we do know that you can't put them within 1,500 feet of each other and within 1,000 feet of a school. So that would be the other restriction. So if you put one up in McHenry and they tried to put one in an unincorporated area, they can't do it within 1,500 feet. If ours is their first.
Correct. But the thing is, they could both, you could have two owners, one in the county and one in the city,
They can't be within 1,500 feet.
but they could both put in applications. And it could be the one outside of the city that gets the application, and again, we don't monitor it. And I think one of the points that's brought up with that too is not that I wanna try to change the subject, but, in 22 years, there's been at least 2 or 3 conversations about the islands that are all through the city. And these are the potential hazards when we leave small islands outside, or that are surrounded by the city, and we leave them in the county. Because then there are incidents like this to where we could wind up with not being able to control these type of things happen. So it's just food for thought for the future on that. Like I said, I didn't wanna take us completely off of the conversation, but it's just, different things that we need to analyze and look at. Maybe that's more of a discussion for when we go into the planning meeting at the end of the month.
Any other, Alderman Devine?
Yes, I agree with the other very much. No on-site consumption, off an industrial park. We could tax it up to 3%. I think we need the revenue, so do that. Maybe 2 places, limit it to 2 places.
Thank you. Alderman Devine?
Yeah. Only because sometimes it spurs more conversation from the council too, is I know I've seen that, at least 1 or 2 hands up.
Yeah, no, we're gonna get to them.
I was just gonna
Yeah,
say
no,
that
we're
maybe
gonna-
we need to look at that,
Mm-hmm.
because I would be quite curious on what, the public
Sure.
has to say about it.
Seems like a couple know about this business. Anyone else? I'm gonna move on to the public. Anyone that would like to speak? Sir? Please state your name and address for public record at the podium, please.
Hi, my name's Corey Grippy. This is my business partner, Jeff Olson. We actually spoken about, we're looking to open up 3 recreational dispensaries in the area. This is one of the locations that we are looking at. We've got some other ones also. We actually do live in the area. I grew up in Libertyville. I live in Vernon Hills. Jeff lives in Wakanda with his wife and their kids. A couple of things that I heard that came up that we just want to clarify for you to really kind of help. I know you have a lot of questions. As it pertains to the number of dispensaries, in the 9 counties that are around Chicago, there will only be 47 dispensaries. So that's less than 8 per county. That's all that's gonna be here, so you're not gonna get 2. You'll be lucky to get 1. That's just the facts, that's just the numbers. You are correct in that the dispensaries that are currently operating as medical, they will get their other ones. As a matter of fact, 5 of them already received their licenses. They don't have locations yet, but they have received their recreational licenses. Basically, we're just right here to, so we can answer questions and talk to
So
you guys.
what's here, I got a question.
Sure.
How did one of you guys get a permit when there's so few given out?
So the way, what we have, we actually have representation in Springfield. We have, some of our partners, one of them, she opened, the Naperville location, she also opened the Joliet location.
Medical?
Medical, 2 of the largest and most successful. She has since sold hers. She's partnering with us. We also have the very best security working with us. Currently, Kenny Boudreau does 22 medical dispensaries. Chief, I'll give you peace of mind that you will actually have 24-hour access to our cameras, audio and visual, that you can look at any point in time, whatever you like. Security is paramount. When it comes to basically zoning an area, about 5,000 square feet, we need to have an area to pull a vehicle into the building, and it needs to be highly secure. If it has to have enough lighting, it has to be highly secure. If it's not secure in our security's eyes, we'll actually step away from the location. So it is very important. That's actually one of the highest scoring points in the application. The application will be about 600, 700 pages. Those applications come out on October 1st, roughly. They have to be in by December 31st, and those will be approved by around May 1st, is what we're being told currently. It could change, it's Illinois.
And are you interested in a dispensary,
Yes.
an infusion, transportation, or cultivation?
Right now, we're trying to open up 3 dispensaries. We will apply for craft grow. That doesn't necessarily mean that would be here, where it would be a separate building. As it is right now, the way we understand the law and the law it's been interpreted, they cannot be in the same building. There would have to be a division, a wall.
Okay, but that's the same category of use, dispensary and craft
Correct.
growing.
Correct.
Are you gonna not sell infused?
No, we would.
I can answer your
Yes.
question here. So, in the terms of the different categories that you were naming, craft grow is the smaller of the
Dispensary.
categories
Okay.
when it comes to raising and growing cannabis. And if you do own a craft grow dispenser or craft grow facility, you can infuse products. You can do like a micro version of the larger licenses that you're talking about, which is infusion. Infusion license that you're referring to is for larger scale, because you can only purchase in Illinois. The product has to be grown here in Illinois and distributed to all the dispensaries throughout Illinois. So what's grown here is sold here.
Yeah.
Okay.
To your question you were at, somebody had mentioned that they were afraid that they'd start selling alcohol and things like that. That's illegal. And you actually
can't
cannot do that. No.
By state law?
Yes. Per Matt, who's actually down there writing the laws with everybody, he has informed us that no, that's not allowed. Because we had actually asked about dram shop. I'm an executive chef for a rather large company, and that was one of the things that I came up with, is dram shop gonna be needed for us? Because we actually do not want any consumption on site in our business model. But we don't need dram shop.
Do you feel that being in an industrial park, and you know our version of industrial parks, or business park, would be a problem for the dispensary?
We'd have to take a look at the areas, but we're trying to change the perception of what it is. Right now, there might be some people who imagine dark alley deals going down. You change a $20 bill for a little clear plastic baggie. That's not what it's going to be all about. There's going to be a product in a bottle that's labeled. You see what's in the bottle, and you know what's in the bottle. You're getting it from a reputable source.
It's all tested.
And it's all going to be tested by a state. So we're trying to change the perception of it. So being tucked away in an industrial area is, we can work with you guys on this, but we were hoping for something that was a little more available, visible.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you don't think it's a destination point?
It is.
be a
However,
destination.
when you get into that back, when you're tucked way back there, then security becomes an issue. Because if something does happen, though
Makes it tough to get to.
it is well fortified. Our security guy, 34 years as an officer, 20 years military, DEA. He actually did the security systems for military installations around the country. And he will tell you right away that if it's, not a good location, he'll say, don't do it. So it needs to be somewhere accessible. You don't want to have to go through 30 different turns if something were to actually happen.
Any questions? Alderman Schaefer.
Do you know how many other people like yourself are out there looking to come in this area? Do you have any idea?
In this area, I don't know.
I'm just wondering, because you're the first ones that we've heard speak, and when you say that there's 47 in 9 counties, that's that's still quite a few in those 9 areas. Now, do you guys have a medical facility now? No. So you're brand new in the business?
Correct.
That's all I have.
Alderman Santi.
But you already have representation down in the state of Illinois.
Correct.
Yes, correct.
Now, how would it work? Does the city of McHenry receive potentially one license and then we have discussions with?
You would
what
approve
this-
it, we get the license, you would approve or disapprove, this is how it
Okay.
goes down.
So they could file in multiple
So-
counties or multiple areas.
Correct,
and
we're
if they
looking
get
for
one of
that
those-
conversation with several towns.
So you're telling me that they received the license, and you guys have already presented to us that you're talking to at least 3 communities. So now, understand that now they hold the key here, and they're gonna start negotiating with 3 communities at one time. At least that's what I'm hearing.
Or applying for 3 licenses.
Or applying for 3 licenses.
Correct.
Okay.
It's very rare to get all 3.
Correct. Actually, we were gonna apply for 5,
Making better odds.
Okay, I have concerns there, but I will
Alderman Glad.
pause at this time.
So the process, if it was anything like the original growing and all that, basically they have to get approval from the city, don't they, as far as zoning and everything else, before they apply to the state?
No, they won't
Not
apply to
necessarily.
get a license.
So
It
they apply
helps.
for
That'll
the
be a waste of
license
time, right.
it certainly
It's a
helps,
benefit.
but we don't.
before they even come to the city.
That's what they plan
So
on doing.
so the state's going to approve you to open one up, even though they don't know where you're gonna open it up yet.
We have 180 days to open our doors, negotiate.
I understand, but what I'm saying is what I'm getting at is I just don't see where the state's giving out these licenses and saying, okay, you've got a license, now open it up whatever community you wanna go to.
They're not just giving them out, this is not paying state.
That's why I say, you know, you
So
almost have
the
to
way-
get
the
approved
way-
here.
How did you know there was 47 going in 9 counties? Where's that
Because of
come
our
from?
representation downtown, it's actually in the bill, if you look at the description, it's actually in there.
It's the BLS region, Naperville, Chicago, Elgin is what they're terming that as, and that's the 9-county region where the 47 dispensaries will be released.
'Cause like when the
Of
medical came out,
47 of the 75.
The state police were involved with that, and they
Correct.
picked so many, like 12 locations in a certain one area, so. Just wondering, thank you.
So, and to get to your point, your concern with the licensing, we're looking to work with townships now, so that when you fill out your security, which is a huge point, the whole thing is based on points. When you fill out the security, you can put together this is our ideal location security plan. But why we're here, why we're talking to you, is to identify a location in town, if you were to have it, where we could look at, then we can bring in our security team and actually do a plan, so when we submit, then we actually have a location, and that's where.
If you don't mind, we're gonna have you sit down. I'm sure there's some others that wanna speak, and then
Thank you very much.
appreciate your.
One last thing that I would like to add is that, I think Corey was getting to that, is that we live here and we'd like to help the community in any way we can as well. We think that's important for you to know.
Thank you. Ma'am, please state your name and address for public record.
My name is Paula Ray. I'm a 43-year resident of McHenry, so I am from McHenry. And I am currently writing my application for permit for recreational cannabis dispensary here in town. The reason why, first of all, I've got a bunch of notes, but y'all talked about them when it was your turn, so I'm trying to kind of think about the things that I want to touch right now, which importantly is location. And what I would suggest is, for me, I want to be close to the police station. I want to be close to this building. I want to be within, a hop, skip, and a jump from you, because if you say no, then, for me as a McHenry, and I think that it'll elevate us in the state. I really do, and I think that it's important for you to listen to your constituents and the folks in town that really are now driving to Mundelein. That's what I do. It's 45 minutes one way. I wait for half an hour, 45 minutes to get my medicine. I realize it'll change recreational. Everybody thinks kind of, I think Jeff, that was your name?
Yes.
That people are in dark alleys and smoking. I trust me when one of the people on your council knows that I've been helping a 92-year-old gentleman try to see if cannabis helps with his ailments. So I realize that we're thinking recreationally, but a lot of people that are going to be coming are going to be patients that just haven't gone to their doctors yet to get their medical cards. They're waiting to come in when it's legal, so maybe they're not getting scrutinized as much, wanting to utilize cannabis. It is a wonderful plant. I drank the propaganda Kool-Aid, trust me. I worked for Family Service for 12 years. My boss was in charge of substance abuse, so I was a naysayer. I didn't believe in it at all. Until just ailments, nothing worked. 2 years later, I feel great. And I want other people, I want the people in McHenry County proper to feel the same way. And I think that having a dispensary here in town also helps mitigate any of the issues that you're talking about. People driving through town from other municipalities, that won't be an issue, especially if you can see people leaving. I do not believe in on-site use. I think that's silly. Quite frankly, it's opening you up for lawsuits and other things. I don't think that works for where we live. Chicago, places where people can leave and walk, that's one thing, but here, I don't think it is the best choice either. Hold on, before I sit down, I want to make sure I touched on some of these other things. Oh, some of the risks that were on the agenda. Somebody wrote school and youth safety. I see that as a huge opportunity. I think that we can continue to work with the schools and educate these kids. And I think it's also important to note that in a lot of the places where legalized dispensaries are here, the kids within a year and a half, the use of the teens and tweens drops off considerably. And I also want to say, if there are questions moving forward, why not take advantage of the people here that have been to meetings, who have run meetings, who have been doing education and outreach, and develop a task force or something like that. I think today, though, deciding that yes, McHenry will accept permits and applications, that's kind of what the rest of us want to know, because there's a fee associated with handing in a permit application, and you all require us to have an actual address written down on our application, whereas, as mentioned a couple minutes ago, the state doesn't require that until after 180 days, after they've given you your actual license. So it's kind of convoluted, the way to get to where we want to get to, but I think that working together, we can certainly make that happen and make that work. And if there's a possibility and you're open to it, why not take advantage of the people over here that have the knowledge and all of the different facets of knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on behalf of this item? Last chance. I'm gonna go back to council. Is there any other questions, comments?
Well, so we do need direction. What other towns are doing is we're preparing a form ordinance as a proposed zoning ordinance, bringing it back to the city council, and then the city council looks at it, and then discusses it one more time, and then sends it off to zoning to have a hearing and consider all the issues that we discussed. In order to prepare that zoning ordinance, we have some direction about an industrial park area, which we'll take and we'll put into an ordinance and bring back here if that's where we go. Your deadline, if there is a deadline, will be January 1, theoretically. This is theoretical, because that's when these other 75 licenses are going to be issued. We don't know when. You just heard dates thrown out. but most towns are taking December 31st as the date they like to have zoning in place, so everyone knows where everyone's going come January 1. So if we were to follow the protocol of bringing a draft ordinance back to the city council in September, late September, early October, you send it to zoning for a hearing, which requires published notice, maybe late October, you're into a November consideration, if we kind of follow those timeframes.
Alderman Benny?
I just want to kind of change what I said earlier about a space in an industrial park, because I think that the points that were brought up today are pretty important, that may not be the best security, it may not be, you know, in the best interest of those businesses and our community. So I don't know the answer to that. Maybe Ms. Miller would know a little more, having said on planning and zoning, of how that might work, but I do think that maybe opportunities to look at other places that maybe aren't zoned industrial parks, but maybe, you know, really aren't in the heart or on, you know, of a community, or obviously near schools and things that are gonna be prohibited anyways, should be considered.
I think the most important part that I just heard is parking, accessibility, and security. And I don't necessarily think that those three things are industrial park. So I agree with Bobby, and I agree with our speakers, that we need to kick this back to zoning and say what is appropriate. And I agree with Chief Burke, downtown Green Street's not, but is a mini mall appropriate? Is a standalone retail space appropriate if it has adequate parking, adequate security, and, you know, easy access? I don't think it needs to be shoved in an industrial park, because I don't think that's the right place for it. But I think we have to be selective where we allow dispensaries to open business. So in my mind, I see us giving direction about option 2, which sort of pulls together the conversation we had, and going back to zoning and saying, what do you all think? Where do you think this should be, and how can you create that? We've spent months recreating our zoning classifications and looking at every square mile of the city and saying what should and shouldn't be, and now where does this fit? So I think Doug and his commissioners could put that together for us and say it fits here or it doesn't fit here, and this is where it can be. I don't think we have a new map here, but we've spent a lot of time on maps and where, what should be. So I agree, I think we should give some consensus direction, let zoning do their thing, because they're more in tune with the maps and the streets, and come up with a plan. I mean, it's a special use, it has to come back to us anyway for final approval, and if at the bottom line we don't like the location, we say no. But to say you can only be in an industrial park, I'm not in favor of that, because that's in the wrong place in a lot of times. So I'd like to see zoning do a little bit more look at it, not to kick the can down the hill, but I think the points of it's not a alley deal, and we need security. I love I'd like to be next door to the police station, that would be cool. We need to find the right spot.
Chief?
And not to convolute this anymore, the goal for us was to get some direction from council tonight. So probably Doug, much more than me, knew what direction to steer if it was gonna go to a zoning commission rather than back to council again. We do have some additional trainings that we're going to be attending in the month of September and October. So David, your timeline of bringing this back to the zoning commission in September wouldn't work for us. We wanna make sure that we attend this training, we get knowledgeable information. We're going to speak to the Illinois Municipal League at the end of this month on the topic as well, and that's why we don't want to rush into making a decision or a package to bring back to you. We wanted some general guidelines. We wanted to know, A, do you want to allow it? It sounds like council, all 7 of you want to allow it, so we checked off that box. Then we wanted to know, how many would you like to see in town? And I think the consensus was, from what I got so far, was 2, no more than 2. But probably we do agree that we'll probably be lucky if we see 1. We know that. But by developing zoning that basically only allows two to just show up in town, we can always come back to you 3 years from now and change it if you decide you want to allow more, and we've seen what the effects of our community have been. And then, we all got the 3%, I think, was the general consensus. If anybody felt differently. No on-site consumption, and then there was a little bit of difference in opinion on the industrial, and just from the law enforcement perspective, our two main industrial parks are close to us. I don't know the individual he was talking about for security, but I do know security. I like both the industrial parks. They're close to the police department. They have limited entrance and egress, which makes them not prime targets for robberies. Locations that are on main thoroughfares where people can get in and out of town quick, those are prime targets for robberies. So I do like the two industrial parks, although I do know we have Adams off of 120 and some other locations. So from my perspective, security-wise, locations within industrial parks can be much more safe than a busy strip mall that has all sorts of distractions going on at the same time that we'd be dealing with. Yes?
Plus if the one gentleman who spoke, his model and his business square footage is not gonna be found in
5,000 square feet?
Yeah, it's not gonna be found in a strip mall.
Yeah. It would be easier to
I
find
mean,
industrial.
possibly we have some, but I mean, it's.
We can build under the old spot.
Yeah.
Our concept was if we could get you guys to give us some direction on these
Yeah,
so you
specific
got it,
topics,
you got it.
we could then come back and provide you some direction. If you like it, then Doug can do, he does have to go to his commission as well. It's part of the process. But we didn't want to go there and without some direction from you to get to that commission. Because at the end of the day, it has to come back to you, and we don't want to waste that time. Because we do want to bring something back to you.
I agree that you got most of what you needed, right? Yeah. Pretty satisfactory.
It really was, it was more the industrial thing, is the consensus that you're in support of it or not in support of it, because there was some change of conversation there, and I think that's, Doug, that he's gonna need some direction on that.
No, I think I have plenty of notes. I have, it's time, place, and manner regulations. So no matter where it is, we can regulate time, place, and manner, and you can eliminate many locations that way. So I think we can work with that. I just wanted to give the council perspective. I've been contacted probably almost 10 people about this issue or met with, along with Ross. So there's people talking about this, multiple towns, and October 1st is a looming deadline for many people, so it's a hot topic.
Now, I'd just like to say something real quick. Does this hurt our odds, and not that I want to rush this, but does this hurt our odds of getting a dispensary in our community by waiting till November? Yes.
It does.
Okay. So just something to think about too. Not that I want to rush it, but that does hurt, our odds of getting one. And if we are all serious about having one in our community, I think waiting too long can really put a damper on us getting one at all. So that's just my thought. Alderman Schaefer?
That's why I don't wanna see us eliminate the business parks and industrial parks. Those are some of our nicest locations and buildings and facilities in town, and they're often just off main areas. It's not like, like saying it's in a back alley with a little plastic baggie. Our industrial parks are beautiful locations. I don't wanna eliminate those. There may be other people who would like that location. And I mean, ours are close to very, prominent business points and very prominent locations within the city. The hospital where you've got, hundreds of people coming in and out every day. They're in nice locations. I don't wanna see that eliminated from here. I don't know. I just think it should be considered.
Alderman Bainey?
I agree, Jeff. I think it should be considered. I just don't know if all those spaces would be ideal, but I don't know how the rest of the council feels about this, and I understand Chief Burke wanting to have more information. I don't know if anyone on council, everyone seems pretty strongly in favor of bringing a dispensary into town, so I don't know if waiting would actually change anybody's perception of wanting to do that. And I would hate to think that other communities approved, you know, a dispensary and we miss the opportunity, or we have, you know, business owners here in our community that are ready to do something and then they miss the opportunity as well. So I would hope that we could move it forward so that we're prepared and ready when these, you know, permits are being granted.
So is there a way to do this by getting, Chief?
I would just say that nobody in this county is farther along than what you are right now. You know, I can't speak for Lake, I didn't reach out to Lake County or the other collar counties, but I know I reached out to every major municipality in this county and asked them where are they at right now. And they're in the same spot as you are right now. Nobody has already made a decision, approved it, passed ordinances, established zoning. They're all in the same process within a week of one another right now. We're not, in fact, there's other people that are having the same conversation in some form tonight as well as us, or they are going to be tomorrow as well as us, as you saw in the handout I gave you. So I don't want council to think that we're missing the boat. We did our due diligence to try to bring together as many facts to you tonight. And I know that there are other municipalities in this county that will be attending the same training that Doug and I will be attending on September 19th to the 21st for the fact of this topic in itself.
But, and I appreciate that, and I really appreciate all the information you shared with us prior to the meeting. But that doesn't mean that anyone in another meeting tonight is saying, let's hold off for another couple months till we finish trainings and then move forward. You know, they may be having these discussions and saying, let's move forward, and then hopefully our police chief comes back and says, we've got better ways to, you know, choose a location, or, you know, to kind of, you know, really just to regulate whatever's gonna be happening in the community. So just that being said, I just feel like we should continue to try to move forward without waiting for those trainings to be done.
We weren't intending,
just
just so we weren't intending on waiting to do what those trainings. That's just, we figured the process to bring the finished product back to you is going to be, it's just not gonna, even if we didn't have those trainings, it's not gonna be in October 1st. It's not possible to meet that deadline. So we were gonna still move forward as planned. It's just that any additional information we could get from people through the process. The interpretation of this law is fluid, and even these gentlemen here who have a lobbyist, somebody in their corner downstate will tell you that that's how this is working, is it's the interpretation. It's 600 plus pages long, and everybody's making their best legal judgment on what it is. And those are the things that we were hoping to get some more clarity on, or if we did, at least provide it back to council.
I have a question for Director Martin. And just like when we approved the cultivation facility, we have no assurances or guarantees from anybody who's applying for these licenses that they are definitely moving to McHenry.
Correct.
So we have no guarantees on that anyway.
No, but timing is critical, and it just puts you in a better position.
I understand that, but I would, my point was that even when we approved that cultivation facility, we weren't one of the 20
Right.
selected.
Right, correct.
And we were way ahead on that, or we were well in time for that as well.
Correct.
So I mean, can a licensee come forward and guarantee a spot in McHenry if they get one? Would you accept that?
They can't guarantee it unless they have a license with a location.
I know, but just to know that you have some assurances that if they get one, they're coming to McHenry. Can we do that, Attorney McCardle?
I don't know how you would do that.
Sorry.
Say your name and
Hi
address.
guys, my name is Jay Chavda, from Madison, Illinois. I've applied for licenses in a number of states, including Illinois. I won every license I put in, whether it be cultivation, and the most recent one was in New Jersey, where only 6 were issued. So I've done the process a number of times. Illinois in 2014 had the most stringent requirements for applications. So if you look at the medical license application now from 2014, it's probably sets a good parameter of what you are looking for. The new licenses or the new application will be a little bit more looser because cannabis is here to stay, whether you like it or not. I would recommend the entire council that if you're gonna move on it, have your ducks in a row November 1st, because big corporations, like grassroots, and a number of people that are looking at McHenry, genuinely, as am I, I'm repping one of those people.
When you say McHenry, do you mean the
Here.
city or the county?
The city. So the way I'm gonna do this application, or whichever one that I've done many times, is that I'm gonna assess points to my own application. Now, if that city already has it approved and I have something that says that, look, they've approved me, this is the location, we're good to go on that, instead of waiting till December 1st, then I'm gonna value that application higher, which you can rank what you're looking to do. I think in this state, I have to look at the application again. But I'm gonna focus more on it. Otherwise, I'd rather go somewhere else, because I need community support. Community support is an essential part of every cannabis application. So if you don't do a good job with community support, and I don't have it, I would tell the person I represent that I'm not gonna apply here, because we don't have the community support that we need, because everyone's application is gonna be stellar. And the number of public companies that exist now that are applying in the state, including the ones that are in Chicago, like Green Thumb, you name it, everyone is gonna be in Chicago and the surrounding suburbs. They all have excellent app writers, they all have operational knowledge. It's just a matter of wherever they feel that they have the highest possibility of getting the application because of community support is where they're gonna be going. Otherwise, they're gonna go to the next town over. And that's why people are applying in 3 or 4 locations. So I have to go to a lot of meetings. But the point being is, if we don't have community support, do not expect to have a license in this city, basically, is what I would add. Based on what I've seen, and I have a license in Pennsylvania where we're in a strip mall, actually, our dispensary's in a strip mall. It's a number 2 or 3 grossing highest revenue dispensary in a town of like 25,000. So you don't know where it's gonna be, but Illinois, and Pennsylvania, you have to have community support, and the council will have to have their ducks in a row for them winning this license. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of time wasted on other parties. That much I promise you, based on what I've seen.
Do you have an opinion about hear me over here. Do you have an opinion about this location issue? If you're even familiar with the city.
I'm not familiar with the city, because until this meeting happens, I'll really start working after, because depending on which way you guys are gonna go. I will say that the best security plan for the location that you have is what's gonna work out. I mean, I've seen industrial park locations where they bought the next building over and built a alley so that way you could walk once you park inside of the next door building. I've seen ridiculous things. What makes it a safe transaction is what's gonna win. So when I, for example, look at a location, I really don't care if it's on a main street or an industrial park. If I can't put a good security perimeter around it, it doesn't check the boxes. I mean, that's gonna be a very important thing. So I would say keep it over both, but securing a main street facility is difficult, especially in this state. It's not another friendlier state like Colorado. Colorado's got a population of 4 million, we have a population of 7 million. Colorado has 402 dispensaries. 420, of which 402 are medical, 420 are all recreational. So we're bigger, but we're not at the stage where we're gonna be opening up dispensaries in corners. I would say that whatever sites you keep open have to be able to overflow with the security plan. Otherwise, we can't protect it, and if we can't protect it, then the state is not gonna approve it, because they're gonna see every likelihood of whatever applications are putting in for security plans. So I would say that whatever the facility may be, what does the city want? The city wants to protect its constituents. So therefore, it needs to be in a site that's most viable for protection and accessibility for police, right? So I would assume the further away you are from regular population and foot traffic, the harder it is to protect, because the longer it takes to get there, but also the more susceptible it is for crime to happen because there's less people here. So that's my own 2 cents, but it's all about how I'm gonna write the application, and how I'm gonna bring those things up and put them and say that instead of this being a negative, how's this a positive, right? So, but in my experience with the license that have been won, without city support, it doesn't make sense that you're gonna get one. It's gonna be really competitive. I mean, these public companies are locking up locations now already, or have been locking them up. Matter of fact, I know a number of them have already locked them up, and good locations. They know what to look for. I already have a location in mind, which is why I'm here. Otherwise, I wouldn't even, I don't think I'd take the meeting or even show up, because I go to a different town where I can develop a good security plan and accessibility for users. I mean, no one should have to drive 45 minutes to Mundelein to get cannabis. It's ridiculous. You're gonna go to your dealer down the street before you go do that. So that's what's happening. So if you're gonna get behind it, then you guys have to truly get behind it, or don't expect to have a license here.
Have you disclosed to the staff your location you're interested in?
No.
Have not.
Don't you need to do that, or?
I do,
Yeah.
I'm basing it on state regulations and what the state came
Oh,
out
I
with.
see.
And then if whatever the city council
Back
says.
into the city.
And they come back, because there's no reason to say something to the city and then, oh, sorry guys, made a mistake, so.
Right, but we don't wanna do the reverse either by
Exactly. So-
classifying something and you saying, well, you
Yeah.
didn't include my lot.
No, there's a number of locations that I have in mind.
Hmm.
So, but they qualify both industrial and I guess Main Streety, so. But they have good security plans that I would be able to go around it.
If I may?
Yes.
You brought up McHenry early in your statement here. Why are you choosing McHenry?
Looking at the map, you pull up on weed maps, which tells you where dispensaries are in the state. I just pick out zones where there isn't one, and that's where I wanna apply. Well, that's where other people are gonna be looking too.
If you could,
And that's the city, not the county.
That's the city, not the county.
Of all the cities in McHenry County, you picked McHenry.
McHenry makes sense for what we wanna do.
Okay,
but-
I'm with him too, I'm just
No,
wondering
no, but you're
how
right.
it
I'm looking at
got
numbers.
on the chart.
Yeah, no, I look at it on the chart, and you can, because that's what the state's gonna do. The state's not gonna issue a license next to one line. It doesn't make sense.
okay, if you know some history of the state of Colorado, when they first legalized recreational,
Yeah.
what was the amount of dispensaries they were doing as a state?
Geez, I don't remember how many medical dispensaries there were in '08.
Or recreational?
Recreationally opened up with, what was that, 2012? I have to go back and check, but it was quite a large number, over 200.
Okay, and then after that original number of 200, how quickly did the state move on allowing more dispensaries in the state?
Colorado's a really bad state to do a model off of.
Well,
We know the number in Illinois, but in Illinois, we know the number.
No, I understand that.
No.
But my point is that I think that once this takes fold, that the state is, well, one way or another, they're gonna be open to either building on that number or holding it, and
But we already know they're gonna be at 500 by 2022.
yeah, but they're gonna, but how quickly are they gonna move to that?
That's
It's
25 years from now.
55,
500,
75,
500. I mean, are they gonna go 500 at 2022 or the deadline right before that? You don't know. So I'm just wondering how, it's probably gonna be a reactive, Springfield's gonna be reactive on this. So they're gonna see this, and then they're gonna say, oh, maybe we'll move up this number. It could change. The number could definitely change.
So
And-
there's
and-
very
depends on
interesting
the
during
revenue, the
townhalls,
money.
that they have income and revenue projections and
Yeah.
where those monies are gonna go. And the most common question was, how do you know? And of course, the most common answer was, we have no idea, we're guessing. And I think we're all guessing on how this is gonna work. And our job, and thank you for your input, because you've lived it, you've walked it, and we haven't. We don't know. So all we can do is continue to ask the questions and get the response and get the research. And I agree that we have to be on the supportive edge or we have no chance at all. And all we can do is garner as much information as we can
Fact-based.
to make a good decision, because that's our job.
Any other questions?
I just had a quick question. So you had mentioned the roll-up door, you have to drive in. Is that a state requirement, or is that just your requirement? Because that would limit feasibility of where a dispensary could be. So that's just a your choice, not a
We've looked at some
requirement.
strip mall options, and
Okay.
one of those options would be a couple of locations in there where we knock out the wall and put a drive-in in one of the units.
Perfect, thank you. And then my only other comment would be the same one that I've said before. I never want to be an obstacle or an opportunity for a business to exist in McHenry. And I think we need to continue to have this discussion timely in order to move it forward in the right direction.
Okay,
Agreed.
all right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we got direction?
Doug?
Doug?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you all for your input too, appreciate it. Staff reports? Oh, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, just, no, one thing, and, next week, totally different subject, but kind of the same, timeline, I guess, thing. There's an event that's outstanding right now that they have contacted us back in July and again in August, that we've given them parameters to say, hey, you need to answer these questions for us. one of the things I think that we struggle with as a staff is presenting that in a timely manner. Again, you don't want to miss out on an opportunity of an event, and so there's always probably some exceptions. But from a council point of view, I think we would like to know is it 3 months for a larger event that requires city support and services? I'm not talking about a picnic where you're just renting the park. I'm talking about like a music fest, something along that lines. I feel like sometimes we get these opportunities and they come to us and we scramble a little bit to put it in front of you because it is a good opportunity, but it puts you in a bad spot sometimes to say, it's our job to think everything through. But from a comfort level as a council, what's your comfort level from approving an event that requires city staff, city services, that type of thing? I think that's one thing that, Chief, would you say that's kind of the direction we were talking about this morning?
The city administrator put together like an events committee meeting. We meet on a monthly basis with people like the Chamber and Rotary, and we have all these events and they're growing every year. And so we started the conversation of how much time do we need for somebody to pitch us an idea, for us to vet it, then bring it to you, for you guys to vet it, and ultimately approve it, especially if it involves a street closure or a special event liquor license, or use of public property, park property, and then police services and parks services. And we want some direction from you on what we can tell people when they approach us. How much time do you want? So you can get a screenshot, because you have to approve it. How much time needs to go by before that? If somebody shows up 45 days before an event and says, we want to fill out the application and we want to move forward with this, that's difficult for us. 3 months could be difficult for us at the time of the year. And so we're looking for a consensus from council to kind of, off the record, just tell us what we can be replying to these organizations that want to have these events. What's a good buffer for you guys to want to hear about it and approve it ahead of time?
Thank you. And real quick, I just want to, also keep in mind if it's only 30 days, by the time they come back to council, it's 2 weeks. I guarantee they're already marketing their event, pushing ticket sales, and you haven't even approved it. I think that puts you guys in a bad spot too. So my suggestion is minimum 3 months if it's using city resources such as police, parks, something that's a caliber of Oktoberfest, some kind of events like that. So that's just my 2 cents. So, Alderman Glenn?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think more so than anything, definitely has to come to council in advance before. There's nothing more irritating than to have somebody come and ask for something and find out that they're already advertising it to the public, or they've got it out, signs out, different places. But more than anything else, the comfortability level for us, I think, is the fact that staff has enough time to review this and have the game plan in action. And so, I think it's more important that staff looks at how much time they need to set it up, to bring it to council, for us to feel comfortable with it. Because it is, I can't ever remember a proposal coming and either the council said yes or no, in most cases yes, but never that, well, give us 2 weeks to think about it, until the next meeting. So, in other words, when it comes to the council, we're gonna make a decision, right then and there.
Right.
So I think, like I said, the comfortability more is staff having all their ducks in a row when they bring it to council.
I always try my best.
Right, no, I understand so.
Alderman Schaefer?
I kind of liken it to the fact of what you said, Mayor, too, is that if someone's trying to do it fast, it's probably not gonna be planned very well. So I think, when your daughter gets married, you're not gonna plan it in 90 days.
All right, can we adjourn this meeting right now? I don't want to talk about this. She's 13.
Right, so if you want it to be good, I'm just using that as an example, and I think, a minimum of 90 days is, so you get your services all together, and that's scheduling for you, Chief, it's having additional manpower, it's not something that, I don't think it's bad on our part to say no to somebody when they can't meet that parameter. Again, we welcome everything, but you gotta have some guidelines out there. It's just, I think it just makes sense. It's not something, we're not so small that you can turn, the ship around on a dime, or too big that you can't plan it. So.
Chief?
Yeah. internally, we talked about 6 months, quite frankly, and the reason we did is that our weekends for the, and we were talking about events, we're talking about an event that requires city services, that's gonna draw a crowd of 2,000 or more, you know, is gonna require street closures, and again, it's not even an event for 500 people, you know, we're not really, and I would equate the event that's going on at Miller Point later this month, that's not such a concern for me as much as Oktoberfest and Blues, Brews, and Barbecues and Fest Days. Our viable months for these type of events are filling up fast throughout the year already. We're basically obligated to a lot of events already, and it is a very healthy balance for city staff to make sure that we can provide services to those two without blocking out. From the police perspective, when you have large-scale events, I have to block days off, so it's already to the point where I tell a good chunk of the police force that they can't take vacation during Festivities, they can't take vacation during the 4th of July weekend, they can't take it during 3 days of Blues, Brews, and Barbecue, during Oktoberfest, you know, and it just keeps on going, during Shamrock Rocks the Fox, so we're taking away viable weekends, and then, you know, that has some negative impact as well on the police force. So by having that screenshot of 6 months out, we have time to evaluate it, can we manage it, from our staffing perspective, and then still bring it back to you in time for you guys to say, yeah, you think it's a good event, and yeah, you should go forward with it.
Thank you. Alderman Day?
I couldn't agree more. I sit on the Fiesta Days committee, and we're already planning for next year. So a decent event that's gonna draw a huge crowd needs to be planned 6 to 12 months probably in advance. And I think that if the planning's already happening, the city should know about it. So if it's a large event like what you described, because our events come in all shapes and sizes, I think 6 months minimum helps to guarantee a good event for one thing, and we want good events in our community, and then it gives us the resources to manage it and allow other people to get on the calendar too, because there's lots of new things coming.
I guess the best scenario for us is usually at least if they're contacting us, you know, that approval might come to you in between that 6 months, hopefully that they're contacting us and let's start working out the details of what's required from the city part, and then when it gets to you, so now when you get 3 months before Fiesta Days, that's when that marketing push and everything starts happening. At least, I mean, generally they're done February is when we take their approval. So they're 6 months ahead. It's typically their time. And, you know, Shamrock the Fox has changed a little bit. That first year was a little bit hairy, but since then everything's kind of fallen into place. Same thing with Blues, Brews, and Barbecue. They're generally, 6 to 8 months that we approve those bigger ones. But in the best world, they come to us and we work out the details ahead of time so that we know, and it might not always be that 6 month presentation to you. It might be something less than that, but as long as they're contacting us, I think, it's somewhere in the middle of that 6 and that 3 of that, anything under 3 from a comfort level of a council and from a city staff point of view, that just makes it too close on a large scale event like that. The Light the Night, the expectation is 500 people, that's almost a larger company picnic. It could be up to 1,000, but from our police services and city impact, closing streets, that type of thing, so in some of those, we'll vet those as a staff in those larger events, but those are ones that we definitely wanna have time and be on the same page as a staff and as a council that we're bringing things to you in a timely manner.
I mean, I do the marketing for Fiesta Days, and we start that in February, so, which is before we come, it's actually pretty far before we come to council, kind of to Andy's point, but again, everybody knows Fiesta Days is happening. You sit on that committee as well, like everybody knows when those dates are, but for something new that might come into the community, if we were that flexible, I think we'd have trouble, and, I think that, however the process is internally for you, is probably even more important than when it comes before council, but I think at 6 months, there needs to be something submitted, before marketing starts to happen. Maybe it's a discussion issue for council or something, but I think that that's a fair amount of time, especially for something new to be applied for.
Thank you.
Having sat on 2 personnel committee meetings, I think the personnel resources is the big piece of the puzzle here, and the more time we can give you two the ability to put the right people in the right place, the better. So I absolutely echo 6 months is the right window to at least get the ball rolling, to put it on your calendars, and not to us less than 90 days before the event. Because from what I'm hearing in those committee meetings, that's how much time you need in advance to get the right people in the right places. So, if that's what it takes, that's what we need to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, 6 months, is everyone okay with 6 months? Yes? Okay. All right, any other staff reports?
Our two federal aid jobs, Current Road S curves, and Pro Street ITEP, the streetscape project, are both starting up. They're kind of slow starting, but they are underway. And then the road program out in Glacier Ridge is also underway. That's all I got.
Thank you. Any others? Mayor's report, I just wanted to mention to council, I'm working on a charity event or benefit event for a concert in June. So now that we're talking about events, I might want to just mention that. I'm working with several businesses in the community to put this event on to raise funds for a splash pad, which Bill is working on design and pricing of what it would take to raise, for us to raise, whether it's $150,000, $200,000. I'm actually working with CAA and Live Nation right now through a few contacts to get a country artist and then some other options like Cheap Trick or REO Speedwagon. So I think we have some very big bands that are willing to come out here, but we're working on that now. So for the approval process, Bill,
6 months, we'll need 6 months.
I know that. 6 months now. But what would it be for the process by council? Is the approval of the splash pad, the destination of the splash pad?
I think that would be one thing if we're going to, I think having an agreement upon location and the scope of what that project will be, so we're all on the same page in terms of, all right, here's what we're looking to install. That would be the biggest thing, in my eyes, that consensus is there.
And it would be in June, so it'd be before everything else kicks off. It's a month that the chief had agreed that time frame would work.
Is a weekend.
The 1 month they're not doing much, so I didn't mean it that way. That sounded bad. But event-wise, so I just wanted to mention that, and as I get more information, I'll pass that along to council. All right. Other than that, I have nothing else. Council reports. See none. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Can I ask one follow-up for Jeff in the second row? Is that you?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of you guys talked about infusion. Am I understanding this properly? The infusion that I referenced as a category is a manufacturing process for which there's no retail? The retail is all dispensary, everybody in the room's interested in dispensaries, they're not interested in infusion, right?
There may be, for instance, the transportation one that you referenced, I originally thought that was for transportation of cannabis. Turns out it's gonna be for cash. This is gonna be a cash-only business, so they were referencing.
So that's all security for how that's handled through the state? Okay.
Correct.
So that's not a money it's money, but it doesn't do a lot for us, correct? Unless it's people employed, maybe
Unless
some
somebody,
building.
yeah, there's somebody in town who.
Okay, but again, infusion.
Yes, infusion, so some company might decide to purchase whole flower from a farmer in Illinois and then choose to reduce that to an oil or some means of being able to put it into gummies or edibles.
That's a manufacturing process.
Correct.
You're not interested in that?
No.
No one else in the room is interested in it? You are?
Yeah.
So we should be looking at an infusion location?
You can, I have to look at the new regulations, I don't think they came out with anything regarding production licenses yet. Production licenses basically means you're turning a flower into a vape pen or an edible, that's what it is.
I believe that was May 1st,
Yeah.
when those applications.
They're coming out after.
Later, okay, so we should mainly be concerned with
Dispensary
dispensaries.
is probably where, and the infusion could go in an industrial park, wherever you want it to go,
Yeah.
because no one really sees it. You're not
Right.
selling there, you're gonna sell it to the dispensaries
Okay.
in the state.
For those, we actually looked at big box, there's a old Menards that's closed, and turning that into a grow.
Okay.
Indoor grow, so.
In cultivation, no one's in the room's interested in
Yeah.
We have a phase 2 to our plan because the staging, state is releasing the licenses. So we are looking at the craft grow portion,
Yeah.
which could be, you're looking at maybe a warehouse the size of 20,000 square feet.
But that's in conjunction with the dispensary.
No, they would be treated as two separate
licenses,
different companies.
Oh, they're two licenses?
Correct.
Can't do them together.
Every state is different.
Okay,
Jersey,
I didn't
for
know.
example, because the state is so small, they issued 6 licenses, but each of the licenses we got were vertically integrated, so we're cultivation, production, and dispensary, and we could have it in the same building if we need be. So every state's different, so if you're in the city of Chicago, then they'll let you do that, because they don't have a choice. You know, you have to get that, so in Illinois, that's not the case, so every license will be different, every application process will be different.
And it's hard to have both.
It's.
Cultivation and
It's.
dispensary.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get to, just because, and there's gonna be less cultivation and production licenses than are dispensary licenses.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, looking for a motion to adjourn. Alderman Bailey?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second, Alderman Santee? Second, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Bailey?
Yes.
Alderman Santee?
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
Yes.
Alderman Schaper?
Yes.
Alderman Mahavik?
Yes.
Alderman Devine?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Have a great evening.